When you are told about the Ace Attorney series, it might not sound too exciting at first. Playing as a lawyer? Who will want that? It sounds like a basic premise when you put it that way, but let me tell you, their stories filled with so much excitement, fantastic dialogue, colorful characters, and some of the greatest jaw-dropping plot twists you'll ever witness. They have the inherent problems that, due to being visual novels, they don't have much impact when you replay the games, but that first time will always be something magical. That's why today we're looking at the top 10 best Ace Attorney cases, and if by any chance there's a game you still haven't played, don't worry, I'll put timestamps so you can avoid spoilers. Without any further ado, let's begin! In the Ace Attorney series, there's this little thing we like to call the third case syndrome. It's usually agreed that the third case in every game is the worst one. Turnabout Big Top, Recipe for Turnabout, Turnabout Why is this case so fucking boring and stupid? But of course there are exceptions to the rule, and the Rite of Turnabout is one of them. What happens here is that after so many years, Phoenix Wright finally meets up once again with his longtime friend Maya. A happy reunion cut short when her duties call for her to participate in a purification rite along with the High Priest. Phoenix is forced to take part in the prayer and gets knocked out in the process. Once he is back to his senses the next day, he is informed that Maya has been arrested under the suspicion of stabbing the High Priest to death. So in the long-run tradition of the Ace Attorney series, it's up to Phoenix to once again save Maya from a guilty verdict and thus execution. The trial itself was simply exciting as Phoenix desperately scrapped for every inch of evidence to save Maya, and at the end of all, Phoenix loses every hope as his most likely culprit turns out to be innocent, and a full of bubble idiot. And both him and Maya are found guilty of murder, and when the screen fades to black, it turns out there has been another murder with Maya being accused yet again. This girl can never catch a break. But since there needs to be another trial, it gives Phoenix an extra day to gather enough evidence to prove Maya's innocence and clear her of both charges. There's just so many things I enjoy from this case. I particularly love having Rafa following you around. She really doesn't give a good impression at first, but having her as a pseudo-assistant makes you understand her more and have more empathy towards her, and this case begins to develop her character. Of course, having a guilty verdict was shocking, but the truth itself was mind-blowing. It turns out that the victim, Thryztan me, was a rebel along with his wife, Believe in me. Yes, I am not lying, those are their actual names. Believe was found out by the rebel hunter Lot and attacks her. In retaliation, she pushes a slab against him and causes him to get impaled by a statue. Since the land of Kurain has no lawyers, it would have been impossible to prove that Believe's murder was in self-defense, and so to protect his wife, the High Priest committed suicide and pinned the blame on Maya. All in all, it was a pretty exciting, shocking, and emotional case, and one of the few survivors of the third case syndrome. Don't you just hate it when a game peaks very early on and no matter how hard it tries it just can't reach that peak again? That pretty much describes the entirety of Apollo Justice. Quite a shame really, but dear god, Turnabout Rom is a great case. Apollo Justice is a completely new chapter for the franchise, new protagonists, new characters, new mechanics, so it should be expected that this case will take things slightly for new players, and of course that wasn't the case here. Turnabout Rom starts simple. Two guys have a fight over a poker match with one killing the other, but then the case pulls no punches. Just as soon as things begin, you find out your defendant is none other than the legendary Phoenix Wright himself. Unfortunately, he's not the man he used to be. 7 years have passed and it's revealed that his attorney badge has been revoked. He suddenly has a daughter, he's a terrible pianist, and a really competent poker player. Shocking revelations for fans, but the case doesn't stop there. The coolest thing about Turnabout Rom is that it creates a fantastic atmosphere of not knowing who to trust. Phoenix has been accused of murder and has been lying multiple times during his cross-examination. His daughter has been acting suspicious the entire trial, and the other people involved with the case don't help much. Apollo pretty much only has himself and his mentor Christoph Gavin who— he's the true culprit. Turnabout Rom is often considered the best first case in the series, and for good reasons. There's that atmosphere I mentioned already, that sense of betrayal from multiple ends, and while Phoenix is indeed an innocent man, he lives a bittersweet victory, as he confesses some of the evidence used during the trial was forged. It's the base that will build up for something bigger, something darker. Only for the game to fall flat on its ass. I'm sorry, the rest of the cases are just annoying, tedious, or underwhelming, but still, Turnabout Rom is a case good enough to earn a spot on this list. One thing I'll always love Trials and Tribulations for is for having one of the most disgusting and despicable villains I've ever seen in a video game, Dahlia Hawthorne. There was already a case that showed you how big of a bitch she was, but Turnabout Beginnings crossed the line. It starts out with Phoenix reading an old file about the first case of his mentor Mia Fey, where she had to defend the escaped convict Terry Falls, who was also sentenced for another crime that happened 5 years ago. And it also turns out that the prosecutor for this case is Edgeworth, and before I continue on this, I just want to mention how much I love him in this case. This is also his first case, we have a newbie Edgeworth here, but even so, he puts up an incredible fight. I admire the work in his animations, he's just a splitting image of his mentor Manfred von Karma, and that's an attention to detail I adore. But going back on topic, as the trial goes on, Mia reaches to the bottom of this. She discovers that Dahlia was responsible for all the events that transpired 5 years ago, and is also the one that killed her own sister Valerie, all while manipulating and incriminating Falls of both crimes. And just when you're so close, just when you're about to prove her guilt, the unthinkable happens. Your defendant Terry ends up committing suicide in the courtroom because of a promise he made to Dahlia. Turnabout Beginnings earns a spot on this list because of how crude it is, even though you already knew how evil Dahlia Hawthorne is, and even though you already gave her what she deserved during the first case of the game, this conclusion just left a very unique feeling of emptiness, making it extremely memorable. Dual Destinies is good of a middle point for me. I like this game, and I like the new characters that it introduces, especially Simon Blackwell, but none of the main cases left a major impact on me, and the main concept of the Dark Age of Law was pretty dumb and undercooked. But the one case that stands above them all is the DLC case, Turnabout Reclaimed. This is the first case Phoenix is in charge of after reclaiming his attorney badge, and one of the most unusual ones because his client turns out to be an orca, who's being accused of killing her owner, Jack Shipley. From here it plays like a standard case, nothing out of the ordinary. The characters involved were colorful and the trials themselves were entertaining, although the musical numbers were kinda cringe in my opinion.
We swim through storms and waves, all because you see grand treasure and adventures waiting just for me.
So if it plays out like a normal case, then what makes it so good? That will be the culprit Marlon Rhymes. Universe just really fucking hates this guy. The story goes that a year ago, his girlfriend, who worked as a performer at the aquarium, died during a show with an orca. Because of the circumstances, everyone thought the orca killed her and is supposedly put down. Later down, it's revealed that Marlon's girlfriend suffered from a heart condition and died mid-show. But since Marlon didn't know about this, he vowed to kill the orca himself, so that the current trainer, Sasha Buckler, wouldn't suffer the same fate. When he sets his plan in motion, he attempts to suffocate the orca by draining her pool. Captain Shipley tries to stop him but ends up sleeping. Marlon tries to save him, but this ends up being futile and the captain falls to his death. Still having a desire to have revenge on the orca, he sets up a different crime scene so that everyone will believe that Captain Shipley was killed by the orca, leading up to the events of this case. Marlon Rhymes is a very tragic character. His methods were extreme, yeah, but he did it because he wanted to protect those important to him. He was kept in the dark for so long, and his feelings of revenge were for nothing. It's not very often you find a sympathetic as attorney culprit. And just when he's about to accept the death penalty, Phoenix steps in and clarifies that the death of the captain was accidental, clearing Marlon of murder charges and giving him a new chance to redeem himself. And I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the few cases in the series that has genuinely made me cry. The ending was so damn emotional and well executed, and made it good enough to earn Turnabout Reclaimed a spot on this list. So if in case 1 of Trials and Tribulations you send Dahlia Hawthorne to prison, then what was the point of having case 4 giving you an extra taste of her despicableness? Oh wow, that's an actual word? Okay. That's where Bridge to the Turnabout comes in. The case opens up with Maya, Pearl, and Phoenix taking a trip to the Hasakura temple so Maya can train her spirit channeling abilities. Phoenix's motivation to go is because he saw in a picture that one of the nuns of the temple resembles Dahlia Hawthorne, which at this point I have forgotten to mention that she was Phoenix's ex-girlfriend who tried to assassinate him years ago. She knows no bounds. Once there, he finds out the girl is not Dahlia, but rather a completely different person named Iris, who also happens to somehow know Phoenix. On the happier side of things, Pearl gets overjoyed to meet her idol, Elise Duxnim, I think that's how you pronounce it, who is a children's book author. This woman is very important, take that in mind. And once night falls, all shit goes down. Elise gets assassinated, Larry Butts is here, Maya is still training on the other side of the area, and the bridge that connects the temple with Maya's training spot gets struck by lightning, causing it to burn. And then Phoenix, concerned by Maya's safety, rushes to her rescue, only for the bridge to collapse, making it fall into an icy river, causing him to get a small cold. But still, it's bad enough for him to be unable to defend Iris, who is being accused for killing Elise. And so Edgeworth takes Phoenix's attorney badge and takes helm of the case with Franziska von Karma on the prosecutor's seat. Bridge to the Turnabout is an incredible case filled with so many plot twists. All the events just keep piling up. The coolest thing is that you got all these main characters working together just for one final case that paid off extraordinarily well. I personally don't think Godot is an amazing character, but I was able to empathize with him during the final moments of this case. And just think about it, at this point Dahlia was already dead, yet, once the truth of everything finally comes to light, she gets roasted so damn hard she is sent to the afterlife yet again, delivering one of the most incredible breakdowns in Ace Attorney history, and also delivering a fantastic conclusion to this beautiful trilogy. This boy can fit so many backstories in him, but the best one comes from Spirit of Justice. Oh yeah, Turnabout Revolution just had to make it on the list for me. Ever since his debut, Apollo has always felt like an underdog, but Revolution finally did him the justice he deserved. Pun not intended. During the last case of Spirit of Justice, Apollo gets visited by his foster father Dirk Samaldi, who was in search of an artifact known as the Founder's Sword so he can help him in his revolution on the land of Khura'in. And after this there's a series of very entertaining and touching father and son moments, perfect to build Dirk's character. They manage to find the orb, but of course, victory doesn't last long when a politician suddenly appears and claims that the orb belongs to his family. This forces Apollo to participate in a civil case against Phoenix Wright, who has his own reasons to be against him, and after so many years, Apollo finally surpasses Phoenix in a very hilarious case, and wins custody of the orb. And that's not the end. The gang is forced to go back to Khura'in to defend Dirk, who's being accused of murdering the Queen's husband. All of this case just keeps building up in a shocking manner, even being tied up with an accident that killed Apollo's real father 23 years ago. I also gotta highlight the scene where Rafa has a mental breakdown when she learns the truth about everything, because honestly, it was very heartbreaking seeing her in that state. But the revelation that turns this entire case around is the fact that, this entire time, Dirk has been dead. The one that accompanied Apollo was Maya channeling his spirit so he could get the Founder's Sword, but also see his son one last time. Something that absolutely demolishes Apollo. I know Turnabout Revolution has its faults, but the good things it does them so right. Throughout the entire series, we have seen the characters take down so many villains that are above the law. But Queen Garang, however, is the law herself. She loses no time changing the laws of her country as long as it benefits her current situation. The last hope Apollo has is dethroning her right on the spot. He blows away a royal guard by pointing his finger very hard. And thanks to the Founder's Sword, he manages to prove she's not the rightful heir to the throne, delivering one of the funniest, but also one of the most fulfilling downfalls a villain has ever had. And with that, Turnabout Revolution brought a natural conclusion to Apollo's character, and also made Spirit of Justice one of my favorite Ace Attorney games. For me, one of the biggest crimes the Ace Attorney series has committed is not bringing Dick Gumshoe back in modern games. Why? But other than that, it baffles me that Ace Attorney Investigations 2 was never localized. Oh god. This game is a masterpiece because of the dialogue, the characters, 5 exciting cases, and the fan translation is so crazy good that you wouldn't believe that, well, it was made by fans. Investigations 2 to this day is still one of my favorite Ace Attorney games, and the case that wins this spot is the Inherited Turnabout, another survivor of the third case syndrome. This case starts off amazing as you get to play as Edgeworth's father Gregory. He, along with his assistant Raymond Shields, are gathering clues so Gregory can defend the host of a TV show, Jeff Master, who's being accused of murdering someone during a competition about pastry chefs. During this part of the case, you come to the realization that Gregory is pretty fucking awesome. In the past, we've had so many characters telling us what an incredible attorney he was, and this case accentuated that extremely well. He's a great character, and by the end of everything I wanted to see more of him. Quite sad that we already know how this story ends. Jeff Master ends up being falsely found guilty, and Gregory's murdered afterwards. Fast forward 18 years and it's up to Miles to solve this case once and for all. The Inherited Turnabout is one of those cases that is so good, so exciting, that I honestly believe this was the final case of the game. It's fairly long, but at no point did I ever feel it was dragging on. I love the characters, and I like seeing how much they changed during those 18 years that passed. And there's more reason to this case to exist, as it also better explains the events of the DL6 incident, and it will eventually affect the remaining cases. And I just can't describe what I felt when Miles managed to prove that Master was innocent after all those years. And that scene where Raymond speaks to Gregory about what Miles did? What a tearjerker. Just when I thought it couldn't get better, this case just proved me wrong in every corner, and that earned it a spot on this list. Now it's time for the top 3 to shine. These 3 cases were very hard to choose in order, but I'm sure of my decisions. So in number 3 we start with Turnabout Goodbyes, the original final case of the first Ace Attorney game. Turnabout Goodbyes opens up with a boat scene where 2 men start having a conversation when one of them pulls out a gun and shoots the other, but close up and the supposed assailant turns out to be Miles Edgeworth. Phoenix gets a wind of this and decides to defend Edgeworth in court despite all the evidence incriminating him. But since Edgeworth can prosecute himself, the man that will stand against Phoenix in court will be Manfred von Karma, a prosecutor who has never lost a single case in 40 years and is also Miles' mentor. Von Karma wastes no time trying to get that guilty verdict as soon as possible, but he never accounted Phoenix giving a good fight on his end, with him just barely managing to save Edgeworth on every occasion, scrapping for any piece of evidence that can help him to turn the tables in his favor, going as far as to cross-examine a parrot for vital evidence. Turnabout Goodbyes excels for so many reasons, like giving the reason as to why Phoenix decided to become an attorney, Edgeworth starts an impressive character development, and the intensity never fades away. Von Karma is another example of a character that perfectly reflects the game's narrative through gameplay. He's described as a scary, ruthless prosecutor that will do anything to win a guilty verdict. Through gameplay, he induces fear into the judge, manipulates the witnesses, and will show no mercy to Phoenix. And also that voice. So when it's brought to light that he is the true mastermind behind everything, seeing him break down feels so unbelievably good. While it is a tradition at this point, it was pretty crazy how all of this tied to a 15-year-old case. So add that to taking down an undefeated prosecutor and helping Miles to get rid of his nightmares. Turnabout Goodbyes very well deserves the 3rd spot on this list. This is one of the most common statements you'll hear among Ace Attorney fans. Justice for All is the weakest game in the original trilogy, but it has one of the absolute best cases in the entire series. And they're absolutely right. Farewell My Turnabout for the longest time has been considered a fan favorite by many, and it deserves each and every praise it gets. It starts out with Phoenix, Maya and Pearl being invited to a hotel to witness a contest about TV superheroes, but the ceremony is cut short when it's found out that one of the contestants, Juan Corrida, has been murdered, with his rival Matt Engard being the prime suspect. But things begin to get intense when Maya leaves for a moment to receive a phone call, cause a little bit later Phoenix receives another phone call from a professional assassin known as Shelly the Killer, who has kidnapped Maya. The killer's request is simple: Phoenix must defend Matt Engard in court and win a not guilty verdict, otherwise he will kill Maya. Phoenix, of course, uses his Magatama to be sure that Engard didn't kill Corrida, and once we have that relief that he's no murder, the investigations and the trials begin. During the trial, Phoenix manages to pinpoint a new suspect, someone who was very likely to commit the crime and had a motive to do it. In this case, it's Engard's manager, Adrian Andrews. So, okay, that's the usual stuff, but at the moment there's quite a lack of evidence, so the judge decides to stop the trial so more investigation can be carried on. So later that day, it's revealed that Juan Corrida was killed by Shelly the Killer, and the evidence points out that Engard was the one who hired him. And for the first time in his life, Phoenix starts to doubt his client, only for his biggest fear to come true. Engard is indeed the real culprit. And this is the point where everything goes to shit. Just look at poor Phoenix, he's starting to doubt his entire career, everything he's worked for, and he's left with a crushing predicament. Will he let Matt Engard walk free so he can save his friend? Can he really go back to defend if he does that? He can still turn the whole thing around if he prolongs the trial long enough so that the police can find Maya before a verdict is given, but the only thing that this does is destroy him more on the inside. He starts to turn everyone against him. The more credibility he starts to lose, and the more the trial goes on, the more likely an innocent person is going to be found guilty. The clash of his ideals and the life of Maya becomes so heavy that we eventually see him having a breakdown, one of the most intense and crushing moments in the Ace Attorney series. But just like I said already, Farewell My Turnabout deserves all the praise it gets. The feelings that it induces into the players are something that not many games can replicate. The sheer pressure of fear and anxiety are prevalent the entire way. I was completely frozen when you're first asked what verdict should Engard get. It has no real input in the story, but because of how I felt at the moment, I was unable to make a choice. So when Franziska von Karma shows up and gives Phoenix the evidence he needs to turn Shelly the Killer against Engard and give him the guilty verdict, that just felt so good, as if I was finally able to breathe again. And followed by a relieving ending, Farewell My Turnabout gets the 2nd spot on this list. Throughout the years, I've said that this case has been my favorite one ever since I played it, but also I've come to realize that it's not perfect. it has flaws. I was considering putting it lower on the list, but my feelings didn't lie. The case that takes the number 1 spot is the one and only Rise from the Ashes. It won't be easy, but I'll try my best to explain why I really love this case. The premise is that one day Phoenix receives the visit from the high school girl Emma Skye, aka the best assistant in the series, asking Phoenix to defend her older sister, the chief prosecutor Lana Skye, who's been accused of murdering a detective. Phoenix agrees to this, but there is one problem. Lana affirms that she committed the crime, but since Phoenix always trusts his client's innocence, he gets set to work. From here on out, the case starts to get worse for Phoenix, as eyewitnesses and photographic evidence keeps pointing out that Lana being guilty, with him just barely managing to avoid the verdict. Eventually, the case gets linked to another case that happened 2 years ago, known as the SL9 incident, where Emma ended up getting involved in a struggle between a serial killer and a detective, with all 3 of them ending up unconscious. The chief of police, Damon Gant, upon arriving to the scene, decided to use the situation for his advantage. He killed the detective and fabricated fake evidence so it would seem that Emma was responsible for his death. This was to blackmail Lana so he could have absolute control over the police department and the prosecutor's office. But thanks to the support of multiple characters and the power of forensic science, Phoenix and Edgeworth managed to prove that Damon Gant was the real culprit behind both assassinations. And that's just the best way I can sum it up, because there's one thing we all can agree with. Rise from the Ashes is long. Long as fuck! There's so much information to digest, so many characters involved, and so many pieces of evidence to keep track of, so it's not a surprise that someone will drop it because of that. But for me, I don't really care, because despite its length I was hooked up the entire time. The former detectives were interesting characters. Damon Gant is an incredible and imposing antagonist. He struck fear in me when he catches you sneaking into his office. That smile is so intimidating. I love the relationship between Emma and Lana. They contrast the one between Maya and Mia, but this case constantly reminds you how much they care for each other. I have to highlight that moment when you're about to reveal Emma's involvement with the SL9 incident and Lana steps in to confess once again that she's guilty. She does that to protect her sister. And it was so cool seeing Phoenix and Edgeworth working together. Accusing the chief of police of murder is not something to be taken lightly. Oh god, he's doing that smile again. They're sacrificing their entire careers just to defend someone and bring out the truth. The final trial, the final moments of this case are still some of the hypest moments I've ever felt in any video game. Taking down Damon Gant and reuniting the sisters is something that has stuck with me for years. Rise from the Ashes may have some problems, and some people may be mixed on it, but to this day, it is still my favorite Ace Attorney case. So, did your favorite cases make it into the list? In case they didn't, then make sure to share them in the comments, cause I read every single one of them, guys. Until then, thank you guys so much for joining in. I really hope you had an enjoyable time, and if you wanna see more, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel, cause that helps me to grow here. And remember to take care, cause I'll be seeing you next time.